President Trump, God bless him for his efforts. But when you tell the BRICS countries that if they do this and unite, you will impose a 150% tariff. Eso no es un arancel. That is a penalty. This is what is bringing all of these countries together. To me, the clever part of this is not just keeping it exclusive to the BRICS countries, but also sharing it through various treaties with all the countries connected to the BRICS nations in some way. I believe that even though the US dollar will eventually lose 75% of its purchasing power, it will do about as well, or maybe a bit better, than many other currencies. When this credit bubble bursts, it will be much bigger than what happened in 1929. This is a serious crisis right in front of us. That's why I say to stay away from credit and focus on real money, which is only gold, not Bitcoin. Only gold. The global financial system is experiencing a significant change, though it's happening quietly. The growth of BRICS countries and the fast development of new cross-border payment systems are helping to establish a monetary system that avoids using the US dollar. The key part of this change is the growth of the mBridge and BRICS pay platforms, which allow quick cross-border transactions at much lower cost than usual. More importantly, these systems are more and more linked to gold instead of dollars, using vaults in places like Hong Kong and Saudi Arabia. This is a move towards a settlement system backed by gold that could eventually compete with the trust that supports fiat currencies. Andy Schectman, CEO of Miles Franklin, and an expert in precious metals. Rick Rule, an experienced investor in resource markets, and Alasdair Macleod, a prominent economist and head of research at Gold Money, point out that BRICS nations are not just strengthening their own economies, but are also allowing nearly 3/4 of the world's population to engage in trade without using the dollar system. What used to seem like a far-off idea is now a real option, growing stronger every day. As the US balloons and the use of the dollar as a weapon grows stronger, alternative systems supported by gold are gaining more credibility. Serious investors can no longer ignore these changes. Now we share the clips from their interview. Before we move on, please subscribe to our channel and turn on the bell icon for timely updates. Gracias y disfruta del video. I believe the strongest criticism of the system is that there are a few reasons. The first point is the renminbi cross-border payment system, known as the mBridge. This system is already in use and has been connected to 11 countries in Southeast Asia, which together have a population twice that of the United States, around 800 million people. They have also become China's largest trading partner by a wide margin. They account for nearly 40% of the world's GDP. They've also linked several Middle Eastern countries, around 5 or 6, into the system. I believe that the actions they are taking involve creating vaults in multiple jurisdictions as part of what I think will ultimately be the Belt Road Initiative. The first vault is finished in Hong Kong. The Shanghai Metals Exchange is broadening its influence. The first one was done in Hong Kong. Basically, this means that the digital yuan can be directly exchanged for gold at the Shanghai Exchange in Hong Kong if you want to have it delivered, without needing to convert it back to US dollars first. Interestingly, the second exchange is currently being built in Saudi Arabia. At the beginning of the mBridge platform, Saudi Arabia was the 5th country to take part fully in mBridge. They are currently constructing one in Saudi Arabia. I just heard an interview with the man who created BRICS Pay. It's a cross-border payment system used for businesses, whether it's between businesses, B2B, or for retail, like small banks dealing with each other or businesses serving the public. It's similar to a credit card that will link all the people who use the BRICS Pay system. We need to recognize that one of the biggest points in this discussion is that many critics argue the BRICS aren't strong enough. They aren't significant enough. I understand why people say that, regardless of their size, they represent about 50% of global GDP. When Sergei Lavrov, the Russian foreign minister, announced that they were opening things up to everyone except the West, the dollar, the pound, and the European Union, it raised alarms for everyone. The man who is creating BRICS Pay said, "Yes, we are currently working on this with BRICS Bridge, which connects central banks. These projects are being launched as part of the Belt Road Initiative right now." Eso es el 75% de la población humana. Also, consider other groups like the Shanghai Cooperation Organization and the Eurasian Economic Union, besides the BRICS. These are all closely connected entities. Not all of them are part of BRICS, but they can all use this cross-border payment system that settles transactions in 7 seconds. It avoids interference from SWIFT and reduces fees by 98%. The key point is that they will each use their own central bank digital currencies, which many countries around the world are already working on or have created. The key is that they will be able to make payments in balances and gold. A series of vaults, which began in Hong Kong, is now being developed in Saudi Arabia and will continue along the rest of the Belt Road. This will allow them to settle in balances in gold or fully in gold. I believe it is a trend that is becoming more accepted every day. I believe it's a mistake to underestimate it. I believe that's what they are relying on. Supongo que veremos cómo se desarrolla todo. This is not a regular currency. This is a common currency for settling accounts where gold is not replacing the dollar itself, but rather what supports the dollar, the trust that we have lost. Anyway, that's my opinion on the BRICS. I'm glad to continue if you want. I agree with you completely about that, Andy. The only thing left to establish is a stable exchange rate between gold and yuan. I believe that will happen. It will happen soon. I think that from China's perspective, that's their goal, but they can't make it happen unless the dollar collapses. The simple reason is that China does not want to be held responsible for the collapse of the fiat currency system. This seems like a second version of Bretton Woods. Gold wouldn't be available for regular people, but it will be used to balance trade issues. I would also add that when you include the BRICS pay layer, which is the B2B side, anyone who has this technology will be able to use it for business purposes. It's being introduced to 75% of the world's population. The only places that won't be able to use it are within the European Union, the UK, or the United States. All this trading outside of the dollar, whether it's done by central banks, businesses, or retailers, is slowly weakening the dollar's dominance. And then when you include the option to buy gold instead of US dollars treasuries, as has always been the case, weaken the reserve status. Why would anyone want to buy our treasuries when we have a $2 trillion deficit and are not being responsible with our finances? Every year there is the use of the treasury market as a weapon, along with the power to impose sanctions. And President Trump, God bless him for his efforts. But, when you tell the BRICS countries that if they unite and do this, you'll impose a 150% tariff. Eso no es un arancel. That is a punishment. What brings all these countries together is that they are not just keeping this for the BRICS nations. They are opening it up through various treaties to other countries that are connected to BRICS in some way. This, I believe, is crucial for turning this concept into one that is valuable and completely valid over time. I find one thing interesting. One interesting thing about this is that until now, China had a strong control over the gold market. There's no better way to say it. Now they are starting to open up. This is a big step. It is truly a big, big step. The global currency situation is changing. The US dollar is still the main reserve currency, but it is becoming more at risk of losing its value. Although it may keep doing better than weaker currencies like the euro, yen, and sterling, its long-term buying power is slowly going down. Large government deficits, ongoing inflation, and imbalances in the global economy suggest that a devaluation is unavoidable. Many observers believe that the dollar's strength compared to other currencies is not as important as its actual weakness when looked at against real assets like gold. Gold is unique because it can be used for exchanging and saving value without being connected to politics or central bank duties. Unlike fiat currencies that rely on credit and accounting entries, gold is a final settlement that does not involve counterparty risk. Silver also presents an attractive opportunity, especially for those who see its leverage potential in both its physical form and through mining stocks. As global credit bubbles grow beyond safe levels, the chances of a collapse increase, resembling crises that could be even worse than the 1929 crash. The answer is to depend less on debt and focus on assets that have real value. I believe that even though the US dollar will eventually lose 75% of its purchasing power, it will likely do about the same or slightly better than many other currencies. I agree with Andy that the dominance of the dollar and the US Treasury as a way to save money will be questioned in the next 20 years. I believe that the US dollar will continue to be the main reserve currency for the rest of my life. Just to clarify, I'm a very healthy 72 years old. When I consider the problems that Russia, China, Brazil, and India have, I don't feel jealous compared to the challenges I face as a holder of US dollars. This is not to say that someone shouldn't label their own savings in a way that protects them from losing value. When you examine all the major currencies globally, one method they use to handle trade wars is by decreasing the purchasing power of people's wages, which makes citizens poorer. Gold is the only form of money that also acts as a safe investment. More importantly, it is considered the only global currency that doesn't have a political group pushing for its decrease in value. Every other currency has a group of political supporters when it comes to using it and dealing with devaluation. To me, that's an important difference. I agree with what Andy says about replacing the global weaponized SWIFT settlement system. By the way, I believe that's a great thing. The rise of different currencies, including cryptocurrencies, is a great thing. I use different currencies. I want people to come up with many of them, hoping that some will work better for me. I don't believe that the US dollar losing value compared to other currencies is a specific reason to buy gold. And I don't think in a relative way that it will happen. I believe the US dollar will perform well against other currencies. However, I don't think it will do as well when compared to gold or sensible investments. If I may add something, I really understand the point that the dollar is the top currency. It is the best fit currency. I mean, when you consider what is happening in Europe, like in France, Britain, Germany, and so on. There is no doubt that the euro, sterling, and the Japanese yen are weaker than the dollar. And they don't have that backup if you want to be the reserve currency. None of them. I mean, when you think about the geopolitical situation, it's clear that Russia is winning the war against Ukraine. They are winning on the battlefield. We only need to consider what that will mean for the euro. I believe that will be a disaster for the euro, mainly because European politicians don't know what they're doing. They do not understand. They simply don't understand what is happening to their east. Additionally, a lot of money is being invested in defense and earlier bank programs in Eastern Europe. I think this is the moment when the euro will really start to drop and decline. The main issue isn't just inflation, it's more about a loss of confidence. Eso es lo que deben tener en cuenta. The reason the sterling is at its current level is that its bonds offer higher returns compared to other major currencies. But we have a serious problem here. We truly have. This will cause the value of the pound to fall against the dollar. I think you're correct, but these are all types of credit. ¿Cómo sabes que es crédito? Well, because there is a duty on the other side of some balance sheets. Or in this case, we are discussing central banks that need to actually make payments. Now, we know it's an entry on the balance sheet, but it is credit. This is why the only way to protect yourself from this disaster, which is coming not only to America, but also to Europe, is to Japan and other countries, along with all the central banks, are technically in financial trouble. The only thing to do is to leave credit behind and invest in gold. Right now, silver looks like it might be a little better. You could likely gain some advantage if you understand how to do it. Y esa es la clave en el sector minero. There's an old story in London about Australian mines. It asks how to define a mine. Is it just a hole in the ground surrounded by liars at the top? You need to understand how to play that game, but the rewards could be really great. They definitely could be. Much of what President Trump discusses is how to bring back manufacturing, and that would begin with the dollar losing value. I believe that saving in dollars, as Rick often says, if you don't go against the crowd, you're likely to become a victim. If you keep your money in dollars, you will run out of money. In my podcast, when I interviewed Rick, he mentioned that he thinks a dollar could lose as much as 75% of its value. I don't think you need to know much more than this. You need to have assets because assets support you, while liabilities can drain you. The dollar is a big problem right now when it comes to keeping its purchasing power. The dollar has fallen 11% this year compared to a group of other currencies. It's almost 50% lower compared to gold and silver. For me, the biggest mistake people can make is focusing too much on the US dollar. I believe that's an easy question, at least for me. It's a simple one. The goal is to reduce how much you rely on the US dollar as much as you can, and look for assets that will perform well in this situation. Precious metals, stocks, and even cryptocurrencies are better options than saving your money in dollars. Many believe that saving in dollars is the worst choice you can make right now. When you look at gold right now, major banks are saying things like 40, 20, 20, or whatever their predictions are. We're talking about banks that handle trillions of dollars. And here are the main strategists and everyone else saying that gold will increase in value. You need to have some gold. The struggling fund manager has no funds and doesn't know how to find any. The amount of money available in the market isn't enough to manage this change in focus. Moving away from useless tech to real money, it's just not sufficient. I can tell that when this credit bubble bursts, it will be much bigger than in 1929. This is a real disaster that we are seeing clearly. That's why I say to stay away from credit and focus on real money, which is just gold, not Bitcoin, just gold. The financial system is moving into a stage where old beliefs are no longer true. Ongoing deficits, shifts in global power, and a worldwide credit bubble that has reached unprecedented levels are coming together. The dollar might still be stronger than many currencies, but over time, its ability to buy things keeps decreasing. Gold and silver are regaining their place as assets that can't be weakened by political decisions or financial tricks. This change affects not only institutions, but also individual people. Depending on traditional savings options linked to government guarantees makes investments vulnerable to systemic risks. In contrast, tangible assets, especially precious metals, provide both stability and flexibility in a world where credit and currencies are more unstable. Those who notice this change early will be in a much better place to protect their wealth and take advantage of opportunities as money moves away from overpriced financial products and into real value. Please share your opinions on their analysis in the comments below. If you find this video helpful, please support us and turn on notifications to stay updated on our newest videos. Nos vemos en el próximo video. Thank you for watching.